What's the pulse of the program out there in Tallahassee, Florida? For Florida State, man, it was not an ideal 2024. But with a new season, hope springs eternal. New opportunity, brand new slate, your 0-0 game, which is a tremendous feeling for the folks out there in Knoll Country. We'll take a quick pulse of the program, like I just mentioned right now. Before we do that, though, make sure you are subscribed to the On3 YouTube channel. If you've been tuned into this show, you know this whole Pulse of the Program series is something we do pretty frequently, especially around this time of the year. So if you're a Florida State fan and you want more content around your Noles, make sure you're dialed in. The best way to be dialed in is by making sure you are subscribed. It lets us know that you want more content around FSU, so appreciate y'all getting locked in. Okay, last year, like I said, wasn't great. Take the old dry erase board out, wipe that thing clean. Brand new season, brand new offensive approach. Okay, so Gus Malzahn comes in. You took him from in-state, I don't know if you call him rival, in-state opponent UCF. Head coach over there, Mike Norvell, says, hey, we go back. Come call the offense over here. It'll be your show. The thing that I love about Gus Malzahn coming into Tallahassee to call the show, you just bring steady hands on the wheel. Not going to be a lot that surprises him. Not going to be a lot that throws him for a loop. Like, he's been around the block, been there, done that, won a national championship. You're in good hands like All-State here with Gus Malzahn as your offensive coordinator. And to keep it a buck, man, this is not to be tongue-in-cheek, but like legitimately, can it get any worse offensively than it was last year? Like 133 out of 134 teams in terms of points per game, 13. Dude, 13 points per game. I feel for the folks in Tallahassee that took themselves every single week to Doak, watched Florida State, and then kind of just gritted their teeth, sat there for 4 quarters, went home. And like to 13 points a game, man, like that's tough. It's one thing if you're getting beat in shootouts, but to score 13 points a game, I feel for you. So again, I don't think it's going to be nearly that bad. I'd be actually surprised if you're anywhere in that vicinity. When it comes to the new offensive approach, though, with Gus Malzahn, we've said this on previous shows, but we will revisit it for this Pulse the Program. Going to be very ping-pong-ish, right? They, being Florida State, they're going to wait for you as the opponent to be the one to make the mistake, hit it off the board, hit it into the net. It's not going to be a lot of, in a perfect world now, Florida State being the one that makes the critical error to lose the football game. So with Tommy Castellanos now transferring in from Boston College to Florida State, I've said this before, he's like a commitment to that whole thought process. They're going to run the football. Gus Malzahn will run the football, I would have to believe, somewhere in the 60% of the time range if you're going to put a percentage to it. And Tommy Castellanos, that's his game. Good on the ground. He feels like he tore the ACC up himself, per his conversation with Pete Nakos, which we'll revisit a little bit later in this segment. But that's kind of what you can expect. Stay ahead of the sticks, be methodical, get yourself in good 3rd and 4 at the most, but we want to live kind of in that 3rd and 3 range. At that point, the whole playbook's open. Now, I do like what Florida State did via the transfer portal, getting a couple weapons for Thomas Castellanos. You got Deuce Robinson and Squirrel White, both guys that I think had enough success at their previous stops to get you excited. Like Deuce Robinson at USC, what he was as a recruit, and then some of the flash plays he had when he was out there in Los Angeles. Big body target. He can be a guy that also could potentially turn into that wide receiver 1 for you. Squirrel White could also factor in as like a wide receiver 2 sort of player. Had some good years at Tennessee. Last year was a little bit of a wash with what they were offensively and what they were doing, struggling to protect Nico and that whole situation with Nico in general. But bottom line, I think you got 2 good weapons to go with your transfer quarterback in Thomas Castellanos. Reason why that'll be important, it's going to be can you have an exclamation mark on what you set up with your run game. All right, we're going to run the football, get 3rd and 3 in a perfect world, get 2nd and short. At that point now, when the defense creeps in and they're getting a little bit aggressive, trying to stop the run because you're gashing them, ideally for like 4 or 5 a carry, over the top, Deuce Robinson, over the top, Squirrel White. All right, now you're still waiting, I think, for some more weapons to step up. But the bottom line here is I think last year offensively to revamp your entire approach, Gus Malzahn, steady hands, good relationship with Mike Norvell. I like the way this whole thing is trending offensively relative to last year. Not saying a ton there, but I think you feel good about the approach. It should be a low risk, high reward in a perfect kind of scenario. Now defensively, kind of the same vibe. I like the direction. I like the steady hands on the system. I like Tony White coming in to call the defense. They're going to run a 3-3-5 kind of approach. The way that Tony White operates It is risk it for the biscuit. It is aggressive. It is swarm to the football. It is be a little bit more force the mistake on your opponent, which while you do that, you also leave yourself exposed to some of these big plays. And kind of what we said with the offense, like, can it get too much worse from what it was last year? You allowed almost 30 points a game. And the disconnect, I think, for everyone that knew Florida State's roster coming into the year and then saw what happened on the field was, well, hey, yeah, those numbers are bad. Yeah, they look bad on the field, but those aren't, 2-10 level players out there. Like, I think Darrell Jackson is a good player for Florida State on the defensive line. Earl Little, they were excited about this time last year when he transferred in from Bama. Shaheem Brown's a guy they're excited about. Like, there's a lot of talent on the field that is nowhere near the 2-10 level. So the hope is now, per folks in Tallahassee, that this new coordinator switch for Florida State will yield some dividends, obviously. But the thought around Tony White as your DC, in addition to the schematic stuff, the feeling is that he just connects better with the players overall. And y'all, man, like, communication for your coordinator to their unit, there's no way to totally quantify how big of an impact that can have. When your players buy into not just your system, but you as a person, you play harder for you. You believe more in what the system is. It's overall, it's a high tide that raises all boats. And I think that'll be something that Florida State ultimately has a better handle on here in 25 with Tony White calling the show. Now, I say the whole part about the 2-10 relative to what their talent was and the disconnect there to lead into this point. My big question for Florida State relative to the success that they could have in 2025 is, where is the culture at? Now, culture is kind of a buzzword that everyone throws out, especially around this time of year, because there's no tape to break down. There's no X's and O's from what this team is going to be to actually analyze. You're talking about some unquantifiables, therefore you talk about culture. But culture, very evidently, last year Florida State was at best absent, at worst abysmal / toxic. And I've said it many times, but there were so many instances during a game where Florida State just looked like they didn't want to be there, man. Like, the game against Boston College was a great example. We got guys trotting off the field with palms up. We got pointing fingers. We got low effort plays, like just all that stuff that just bad football teams do. Florida State did that, which is why I think you get excited about new coordinators, why you get excited about a new quarterback in Castellanos, and why, quite frankly, I had no problem with him saying we're coming after Bama, more or less, in so many words. Like, to have a pulse competitively for Florida State. Maybe you don't love the fact that you called out a team in Alabama that's massively talented and that was a game away from the college football playoff. Maybe that equation doesn't totally clock quite as well. But what I will say about just the pulse in general competitively, they didn't have that last year. Through September, did not have it. And so if that's going to be a little bit more of what Florida State is in 2025, you have my attention. Right? You have my attention. And quite frankly, that fan base, they deserve a little bit more of a prideful approach from their football team out there in Tallahassee. So my question isn't, though, when it comes to how we assess the culture for Florida State, we won't know about Florida State's culture when they play Alabama week 1. You'd like to see them look good. You'd like to see them put up a good fight and be competitive. But the true definition of Florida State's culture will come if they actually draw a line in the sand for the rest of their schedule and say, you know what, this is who we are. We don't care who we're playing. Because what I just said, man, it's easy to get fired up when you're about to max out on the bench press or the squat or whatever. It's another thing to show up on that Tuesday when you know you got to lift legs for 3 sets of 5 and it's heavy weight and it's just like it's going to be a grind, man. Like, who are you when you go to Virginia on a Friday night? Is there the same level of intensity as there is when you have Bama rolling in week 1? Because that's not going to be appointment viewing for everyone and their mama. It's not going to be the game that College Game Day is at, and Game Day is not at Alabama, Florida State. Another conversation for another time. Who are you when those games show up? Who are you in the mundane and the monotonous and the games that maybe don't have Fowler and Herbstreit on the call? That's where I think we see the progress in Mike Norvell's culture and what he's done from last year to this year and the locker room leadership in the terms of the strides that they've taken. So this year for Florida State, we've said it before, it is all about getting back on your feet. If you're a Florida State fan and you say, JD, forget that, we expect ACC championships, we expect national championships, I would say, you know what, the logo demands that. You're not wrong in having that demand, but I would say this upcoming season, it's not about sprinting after you just blew out your knee a year ago as a program. It's about, can you walk again? Can you be on solid ground? Can you make a bowl game? Heck, eight games. For Florida State, hit the over, 8 games. That would be phenomenal for everyone in Tallahassee, because then you kind of restabilize and say, okay, Mike Norvell, bad year, but the year before went undefeated and during the regular season won the ACC, so we kind of have 2 pretty different sample sizes. Show us that this is something where we can pick up the pieces, have a better culture, have a couple hits in the portal, especially at quarterback, and then we go from there. Then we decide on, okay, can we start to jog and borderline run after we have a season where we figure out how to walk again, all right? So I'm excited for this. I root for Mike Norvell pretty openly. I think he's made of the right stuff. I like the way that he conducts himself. I like the way that he goes about building culture within his football team from previous seasons with what that 23 team was. Last year was definitely not that, but overall, would love to see them get back on their feet and see them doing some good things here in 2025. But Florida State fans, again, 1, subscribe. 2, let me know in the comments section your expectations for 2025 under Mike Norvell. Let me know what the pulse is out there in Tallahassee. Hey, Kato on the 1s and 2s, myself, JD Pickell. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.